Chapter 481, 3 Heads 6 Arms. Dong dong dong. Baleful auras seethed and dark clouds spread out, stirring up the space into a state of chaos. The others could faintly see two terrifying figures tearing at each other inside. White Tiger versus Azura. Two great killing gods clashed. Every move they performed was out for blood. They didn't hold back in the slightest. Plop, plop. Fresh blood dripped down, which increased the smell of blood that permeated the air. Without realizing it, both of them had become covered in wounds and blood. They were in an extremely sorry state. The audience watching no longer broke out in commotion like they did before. They held their breaths, not even dare to pant, for fear that they'd affect what was taking place on the battlefield. These wounds might appear to be very horrifying, but to the two of them, they were merely superficial wounds. Given their vitality measured in increments of 10,000 points, their recovery took place at an astonishing rate. The moment their wounds appeared, they would instantly heal at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. Such bloody pain let Feng Lin become increasingly calm, and he even started to recollect the feeling. It was such an unfamiliar feeling. He had almost forgotten what it felt like. Ever since he awakened the stone monkey gene, his body had stone skin and steel bones, being impenetrable. There were rarely people who would be able to break through his defenses head-on. Right now, this Indian, Singh, had managed to do so. As expected of a genetic cultivator on the Azura mythological path. 3 heads 6 arms? What secrets were there behind this? Feng Lin kept staring as his opponent's 3 heads and 6 arms kept dealing attacks. He went deep into thought. The technique of gaining 3 heads and 6 arms was widely circulated in the Huaxia myths and legends. Out of which, the most renowned character was the third prince, Neza, whose ability was the most outstanding out of all the gods. However, Sun Wukong and Yang Jian also excelled in this ability. This was an ability that was comparable to the Heaven-Earth Law manifestations. However, unlike how the Heaven-Earth Law manifestations allowed the external body to become bigger, increasing one's vitality and other attributes, the 3 heads 6 arms was just a physical transformation skill. It allowed the user to possess 3 heads and 6 arms, having no blind spots in one's vision and attacking ability. The additional heads also possessed intelligence and were capable of making impromptu reactions. Combined with the extra arms, one's battle prowess would increase by more than 3 folds. Although the strength increment wasn't as terrifying as the Heaven-Earth Law manifestations, less body magnification also meant less inconvenience to the movements, and with it, fewer flaws that could be exploited as well. What was condensed tended to be the essence. There was no superiority between the two abilities. Both of them were suited for different situations. These ancient abilities each possessed deep profoundness, capable of changing the world's destinies. They weren't something that ordinary people would be able to imagine. After having a taste of the Heaven-Earth Law manifestation's benefits, how could Feng Lin not pay more attention to observe the 3 heads 6 arms when it was just right before his eyes? White Tiger and Azura. Their human transformations went at each other and it was hard to decide the winner. Between their exchanges, Feng Lin's eyes radiated with silver light. He would occasionally observe the prints on his opponent's body. After transforming to have 3 heads and 6 arms, the Azura King's every blood vessel and meridian all bulged up, tangling with each other. They formed many complicated prints that were hard to understand. They were like ancient totems, containing the most intrinsic profoundness of the ability. Genetic potential plus 1,200, plus 1,300, plus 1,400. These totems were the most ancient cultivation codes. As Feng Lin decrypted them, they immediately turned into his genetic potential rapidly. Very soon, it broke through 5,000 points and continued to surge toward 10,000 points. The truth behind the ancient 3 heads 6 arms gradually revealed all of its profoundness before Feng Lin. If the Heaven-Earth Law manifestations could be said to increase one's life attributes through the magnification of the body, Then the 3 heads 6 arms wasn't just a physical transformation. All 3 heads had different thoughts, and this already involved the profoundness of the soul. It allowed one to be able to have 3 sets of thinking concurrently, and the 6 arms could each do different things. With these, one's battle prowess would get a lot stronger beyond one's imagination. Azura King looked increasingly enraged, but he hadn't lost his rationality. Although Feng Lin's attacks were also very fierce, Azura King noticed that Feng Lin had been keeping him hanging as if he was teasing a kid. He hadn't displayed his full capabilities. How dare he do this? His 6 eyes became increasingly bloodshot, filled with compelling baleful aura. Azura King's statue. At the next instant, the Azura King let out a long whistle into the sky. He raised all his 6 arms high and clutching down tightly. Black baleful auras gathered rapidly, taking on a material form in his hands. They formed the shape of weapons: saber, spear, sword, axe, halberd, and staff. At the same time, his 3 faces took on different expressions, including fury, hatred, and vengeance. Baleful auras seethed, and the surroundings felt as cold as hell. They expanded out, making one's heart tense up uncontrollably. Boom, boom, boom. The weapons emitted a strange and brilliant power. It broke through and wiped out everything. Everywhere it passed by, the things there would all disappear completely. Feng Lin was hit in the chest and he immediately felt intense pain. He quickly backed off. 6 bloody marks had appeared on his chest. They were so deep that his bones could be seen and blood was flowing out. With the weapons, the sharpness of the white tiger's claws ceased to exist. It seems that I still have to use my weapon. Feng Lin smiled and let out a sigh. He didn't drag on any further and with a slight movement, regained his original form, holding the metal cudgel in his hand. You haven't given up yet? You only have a pair of arms. What use are they? How can they be a match for my 3 heads 6 arms might? Azura King laughed maniacally, staring over with a gaze as if he was looking at a dead person. 3 heads 6 arms? You think I don't have them? Feng Lin wasn't anxious at all. Instead, the corners of his lips curled up into a faint smile. What? The Azura King was taken by surprise, and he couldn't react in time before the answer popped out. Feng Lin's body shook slightly and 2 bumps popped out from his shoulders and 4 bulges from his back. The new arms grew out rapidly and Feng Lin now also had 3 heads and 6 arms. However, what he held wasn't various weapons but only metal cudgels. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The metal cudgels kept on dancing around, bringing forth a series of violent cudgel attacks. They swept out very quickly. The cudgels possessed endless might. As Feng Lin channeled in the heart monkey force, the cudgels broke through everything in their way. All obstacles were crushed into dust. Bang, bang, bang. The weapons kept on clashing repeatedly with the metal cudgels. Sparks splattered and the attack's repercussive waves were sent sweeping out. 3 heads 6 arms versus 3 heads 6 arms. What mythological path does this Lin Feng actually have? Why is he always able to use the exact same abilities as others? Is it the myriad heart transformations? There were many experts amongst the audience who possessed great judgment. They started making various guesses based on Feng Lin's performances. The duo on the battlefield was engaged in a chaotic battle. However, as the battle continued, a figure kept on backing off with messed up footwork. He appeared as if it was hard for him to keep up. Damn it! I'm the Azura King. How did things turn out like this? The Azura mythological path allowed him to transform and have 3 heads and 6 arms, possessing unrivaled battle prowess. However, someone was using his ability to attack him right now. This was too unbearable. The metal cudgels were extremely heavy, with each strike of it heavier than the one before. They gradually pressed down until he had difficulty breathing. Since Feng Lin had already understood the profoundness behind the 3 heads 6 arms, He naturally wouldn't drag things on anymore. Heart monkey force strengthening. Power strengthened by 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. The Azura King's expression was fierce and violent, but when this blatant power came crashing down on him, all his fury was futile. The weapons in his hands that he had condensed from baleful auras were shattered repeatedly. They condensed then shattered, condensed then shattered. This cycle repeated until they finally disappeared without a trace. Fall. 3 consecutive cudgel attacks were aimed at the 3 heads. The Azura King's heads were struck 3 times in succession. There seemed to be a thunderbolt exploding in his mind immediately, causing him to be charred on the outside and remaining tender on the inside. His burly physique fell to the ground as he was completely knocked out. Genetic potential plus 3,200. Chapter 482, Great Saint Troubles the Sea. Winner, Lin. 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 Feng. The demonic figure with 3 heads and 6 arms suddenly collapsed, his steel-like body smashing heavily into the ground, causing it to tremor intensely. It sent smoke and dust seething. Everyone was taken by surprise and started shouting out. Their long and fervent voices shook the place intensely. 3 heads 6 arms is Azura King Sing's most renowned ability. To think that it has been replicated and used to defeat him. Using the enemy's strongest attack to defeat him. What on earth is the mythological path that Lin Feng cultivates? This Lin Feng is too much of a bug. Other than the time set aside for rest and cultivation, Feng Lin continued to head upwards without stopping. He broke through over 1,000 levels in succession and brought up a great commotion inside the heaven-reaching pagoda. This crazy momentum unknowingly attracted the attention of most of the people in the heaven-reaching pagoda. It was as if a raging storm had arrived. Many people in the heaven-reaching pagoda even referred to the trend that Feng Lin created as Linsanity. Surrounded by many gazes, including those of admiration, fear, and shock. Feng Lin didn't pay them much heed. Instead, he silently assessed the changes to his body. After observing the profoundness of the ancient ability, 3 heads 6 arms, his genetic potential surged crazily, breaking through 10,000 points. He once again obtained a new free genetic point. This was really using battle to nurture battle. With every battle, all the things that Feng Lin comprehended would make him stronger. With the free genetic points in hand, he had no hurry to make breakthroughs. Feng Lin didn't add the points immediately. Each time he added the points, it would allow his body to undergo a complete transformation and recover to his optimal condition. He was in no hurry to add them now, as it wouldn't be too late for him to do that after he encountered tricky opponents or his depletion level had reached a limit. Right now, things were still manageable for him. In fact, Feng Lin also wanted to know how many levels he could break through in one go with his current capabilities. Feng Lin didn't stop at all but continued to advance upward. Very soon, he arrived at a higher level, the 8,713th floor of the heaven-reaching pagoda. Water. Seawater. Endless seawater. The unexpected thing was that this floor was actually modified into the environment of a great sea. He wasn't able to see the edge of it in one glance. Lin Feng, I hadn't expected that you'd be able to defeat Sing, that brainless brute. However, now that you've met me, son of the sea Atlans, it'll be your greatest misery. The strong gales, tsunamis, and waves exist together with me. There's no way for you to win against me here, the tidal waves seethed, bringing forth waves of strong currents. A loud and arrogant voice rang out from them, as if a strong gale was blowing. Haze, too much crap talk. Feng Lin couldn't be bothered with all the crap talk. The boss of each level would say something similar when they met each other, and this annoyed the hell out of him. Wanting to deal a blow to his will? Childish. Silver light burst out from Feng Lin's eyes, and his heart monkey force spread out crazily, scanning through without missing out on anything. However, the unexpected thing was that he could only sense seawater. Endless amount of seawater. He was unable to locate where that voice was coming from. Where was the boss hiding? Other than seawater, there was nothing else. It was as if that person had become one with the ocean. Are you looking for me? It's a pity, but you'll never find me, the waves seethed, sending out series of maniacal laughter. The great sea is boundless. Boom boom boom. The calm seawater raged, bringing forth a great wave that wanted to drown Fong Lin completely. Fong Lin that was floating in the air quickly backed away. Despite so, the waves still came again and again, with each one taller than the one before. They had majestic prowess of heaven and earth, and bent on drowning Fong Lin. Fong Lin's figure moved like an arrow, breaking through the waves repeatedly. However, the massive place was filled with turbulent waves. It was as if the ocean had been completely flipped over, and he was unable to break free. Dragon coiling sea waves great formation. The waves seethed, and a voice was transmitted out once again. Hurricanes brought up the seawater and formed many water pillars that were spiraling upward. The hurricane pillars moved rapidly in the sea. There were several hundreds of them and they came attacking from all directions. After searching for a very long time, Fong Lin was still unable to detect any traces of that person. Instead, he kept on being restrained. He leaped into the air and moved rapidly. Many water pillars came at him and the waves under his feet surged, slapping toward him with overwhelming force. Fong Lin broke through the waves in succession, dodging all the hurricanes. However, there were endless typhoons everywhere, filling up the entire place. Strong gales and vortexes formed a massive formation, trapping him within it, and he was unable to break free. He was forced to keep on darting around, unable to steady his stand. There's no way that you'll be able to win against me. The ocean is endless and possesses a majestic prowess of heaven and earth. It's not something that you'll be able to win against. That maniacal laughter sounded extremely proud. It's still too early to be happy. Fong Lin let out a cold snort. He was getting angry that he still didn't get to see anyone after such a long time had passed. This person kept on hiding himself, and it was really irritating. Since you aren't coming out, then I'll force you to. Let's see how long you can keep on hiding for. Heaven-Earth Law Manifestations. Grow, grow, grow. With a single thought, Fong Lin's body shook slightly and immediately grew at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. In the end, a giant appeared on the spot. It had a towering height of 300 meters. 3 heads, 6 arms. Grow, grow, grow. Fong Lin swayed slightly once again, turning into a giant with 3 heads and 6 arms, holding a metal cudgel in each hand. The metal cudgels continued to extend out rapidly. Very soon, they became as big as heavenly pillars, piercing into the seawater. Roar. Performing 2 great abilities concurrently, Fong Lin was really like a demon that had descended onto the world. His 6 eyes glared, and a suffocating abyssal aura spread out. The people watching the battle opened their mouths wide unknowingly as they looked at the giant figure. Boom boom boom. Fong Lin's 3 pairs of arms had started moving. The metal cudgels kept on stirring in the seawater, creating many huge whirlpools. The whirlpools continued to grow bigger. They were like huge mouths that had appeared in the sea, engulfing everything in the world. The hurricanes dissipated and the tidal waves were engulfed. All of a sudden, the turbulence on the surface of the sea disappeared without a trace. This wasn't all. The measureless divine metal cudgel had once been a divine metal pillar that supported a piece of land. It had the ability to transform. Fong Lin channeled all his spirit force into the cudgels and the divine pillars kept on growing, as if they didn't have a limit. They reached the bottom of the sea, flipping over the entire ocean. Great Sage lifting the seas. He suddenly turned into the legendary monkey that had wreaked havoc in the Eastern Sea, not stopping until he had overturned the entire place. What are you doing? Stop it right now. That voice no longer sounded as arrogant as it did previously. Instead, it sounded horrified. It sent forth an even bigger wave attacking toward Feng Lin. Regardless of how much that person shouted, Feng Lin's legs still stood amidst the waves. His back was as broad as a mountain that stood firm amidst the turbulence. No matter how the ocean raged, he still didn't move. His metal cudgels also didn't stop. Woo woo woo. The whirlpools became increasingly faster, gradually engulfing the entire ocean.
Ah!
An agonizing cry rang out. An invisible water elemental figure slowly appeared from the bottom of the whirlpools. Immediately, 3 metal cudgels stirred and sent him flying into the air. However, before he could escape back to the sea in time, the view before him suddenly turned black. Had the sky collapsed? By the time he opened his eyes to take a look, he realized that 2 huge palms were reaching toward him, grabbing him like one would a fly. He was surrounded by pitch-black darkness, with the 2 hands becoming a completely sealed cage. Even if he could transform into seawater, there were no gaps for him to pass through at all. He tried to barge out from all directions but was completely trapped. After a while, he only heard the host's voice coming from outside. Winner, Lin Feng. Boring. A cold snort rang out. Before the son of the sea could react, his body had been tossed into the distance like a missile, disappearing into the horizon. It was with great difficulty that he turned and looked back. There, a towering figure took huge strides, heading for the higher floors in the heaven-reaching pagoda. Chapter 483, Using Battle to Nurture Battle. Defeating the Son of the Sea Atlans. Genetic Potential plus 2000. Feng Lin's footsteps were heavy, with each step causing the ocean to tremor. As he walked, his body went through an obvious change. His 3 heads and 6 arms returned to normal, and his body shrank to the size of a normal person. 3 heads, 6 arms plus heaven-earth law manifestations. What an exaggeration. With 2 abilities, who'd be able to win against him? As he clears the levels, his opponents will get increasingly stronger. However, so do Lin Feng. He keeps on learning his opponent's abilities. That's right. Previously, he got into an intense battle against the Azura King, but with 2 abilities on hand now, even the son of the Sea Atlans, who is stronger than the Azura King, isn't a match for him at all. Gasps kept ringing out. However, Feng Lin wore a gloomy expression. Although the son of the sea's battle prowess wasn't that strong, his ability to merge with the ocean had caused him to go through painstaking labor and deplete a tremendous amount of genetic power. However, the genetic potential he got back in return wasn't much. It was a waste of time, a waste of effort, and a waste of his expression. He hoped that his next opponent would be more of a challenge. Hey, stop right there. I haven't lost yet. Ignoring the howling behind him, Feng Lin headed up to a higher floor. 8,820th level. Feng Lin had just taken a step in when the world turned dark, revealing a starry sky. The stars flashed very brightly. Heavenly Stars Combat. A lady with a great figure and a long, slender body floated in the air. The night sky was her dress, and the stars were her jewelry. They made her appear like a goddess from the heavens with unparalleled beauty. Although she was a great beauty, she didn't hold back in her attacks at all. Her silver hair fluttered and the powers from the surrounding stars came plummeting down. Many stars materialized in the sky, forming many diagrams: the ladle-shaped Big Dipper, the Azure Dragon constellation, the Vermilion Bird constellation that emitted endless heat. The constellations took form in the night sky, assuming the shape of various mythological creatures and pouncing over as if they were alive. The Azure Dragon uncoiled itself, bringing along the prowess of thunderbolts to send down divine punishment. The Vermilion Bird came on fiercely, scorching with astral powers to incinerate the human world. The Black Tortoise guarded the north, representing the absolute zero to freeze up all creatures. The 3 enclosures, for symbols, 6 heavenly dippers, 72 earthly fiends, and 365 heavenly constellations, all of them materialized. Constellation-type genes? Is this the ability to control the universe's astral powers? Amazing. Feng Lin's gaze flickered slightly and an intense interest rose in his heart. Right now, the universe's stars had materialized and he couldn't hold back anymore. 3 heads 6 arms. He transformed once again. However, this time around, he didn't engage in close combat. Instead, his 3 pairs of hands formed their own seals, and his 3 mouths started mumbling different things. Earthfiend True Fire. Purplish-red flames burned through everything, bringing along the origin force from the stars to incinerate everything in its path. 5 Thunder's Formations. Monkey King Domain. With the reinforcements from the seals, the heart monkey force gushed out. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning gathered, condensing into a domain that would annihilate everything. The 3 heads and 6 arms each displayed their prowess. The 3 heads had 3 consciousness, allowing the concurrent use of 3 completely different means. This was the greatest essence behind this ability. Suddenly, the true fire and 5 thunderbolts all gushed out, clashing with the astral materializations. The ancient stars were said to contain all sorts of profoundness and energies. They materialized into various forms and origins: wind, lightning, ice, light, water, fire. However, Feng Lin's abilities were also as complicated as a kaleidoscope. A stretch of turbulent energy raged in the center of the battlefield, crushing each other. Even the space was stirred up, forming a strange gray color. Matter shattered, energies dissipated. It was like a chaotic scene from before the world was created. Even light rays and sounds couldn't be transmitted out. The time had come to a standstill, the regulations were destroyed, and everything ceased to exist. Such a strange scene made those who saw it feel horrified. However, Feng Lin's gaze kept staring at the figure under the night sky. What profoundness would it have? Genetic potential plus 600, plus 650, plus 700. Spirit force kept on penetrating from all gaps. As he continued to observe, he immediately made a discovery. The astral forces were the origin of reproduction and lives of all living creatures in the universe. Out of which, the light from the sun and the moon was the most commonly known. This lady was capable of using genetic power to reinforce herself and control astral forces. It was a pity that this was an ability of the mythological genes and wasn't a skill that could be comprehended naturally. Even with Feng Lin's abilities, unless he'd be able to get himself constellation-type mythological genes, it'd be impossible for him to replicate this. After realizing this great secret, his genetic potential stopped increasing. Feng Lin no longer held back and attacked once again. Monkey King Domain. His 3 heads and 6 arms all propelled the heart monkey force, summoning endless dark clouds that covered up the sky. They formed many layers, encompassing even the night sky, causing the stars to lose their shine. That great beauty's connection with the stars was instantly cut off. All of a sudden, she no longer appeared as cool as she did before and started to panic. At this time, a figure rapidly got close. His blade-like palm struck her neck fiercely, knocking her out. Genetic potential plus 5,500. Feng Lin didn't hold back against the beautiful lady. He didn't even throw another glance and continued to head upward. 8,901st level. Earthfiend True Fire. The purple flames extended out, forming a massive sea that incinerated everything. Cosmos Freeze. On the other side, endless cold light shone from the silver rising moon. It froze everything up, leaving the universe in a state of dead silence. Hot and cold, the 2 contradicting forces of the universe clashed, producing annihilative exothermic phenomena and piercing radiation. However, a figure within it charged against the flow with an indestructible body, unafraid of any energy clashes. He sent his metal cudgel smashing down. Another human figure was instantly smashed into the ground like a missile, completely knocked out. Genetic potential plus 3,200. 8,950 second level. Heaven-Earth Law manifestations. 5 Spirits ominous fist art. Feng Lin transformed into a giant and performed ferocious genetic martial art moves. The size of his fist was like that of a small mountain. As each attack came smashing down, it was as if mountains had collapsed with a tremendous impact. The fist pressure crushed many huge moving trees, making them unable to get up again. A pair of extremely beautiful twins with pointy ears, like the elves in the Western myths and legends, cried out. The magical spiritual light that shot out from their bodies was completely shattered and they fell to the ground. Genetic potential plus 4,200. After learning the 2 ancient abilities, the Heaven-Earth Law manifestations and the 3 heads 6 arms, Feng Lin charged forth valiantly in his battles. After each battle, he would obtain a tremendous amount of genetic potential that quickly reached the 20,000 point mark, netting him another 2 free genetic points. Other than the time needed for his daily cultivation and recovery, Feng Lin didn't stop at all. Finally, on the 10th day, he arrived at the 9,000th level. At last, something interesting would happen. Why so? The challenger would face a great trial every 1,000 levels. Moreover, every boss after the 9,000th level would at least be at the elite adept realm. As long as he could clear this level, he would be able to obtain the right to access the various genetic sequence diagrams in the heaven-reaching pagoda. This involved the mysteries of the mythological genes, and even Feng Lin couldn't help but feel a strong sense of anticipation. He wondered what mythological path the boss on the 9,000 level possessed. Feng Lin took a step forward, and at the next instant, hysterical shouting seethed on this level. Everyone is in great anticipation. Spirit Slayer Lin Feng has officially reached the 9,000th level, an absolute high level in the heaven-reaching pagoda. And this time around, the opponent he is up against is the Sword Celestial Lu Zhenyang. Sword Celestial? Lu Zhenyang? The moment Feng Lin heard this, his heart instinctively skipped a beat. A burst of white light exploded, accompanied by a soft sound. Feng Lin looked at the source of the light despite the piercing sensation in his eyes. From the light, a small sword pierced through the air and was coming toward him silently. Its great sharpness seemed to be able to penetrate through all matter in the world. It was brilliant like the stars and as quick as lightning. It arrived before Feng Lin in an instant. A sword coming from the west, a flying celestial appearing from beyond the heavens. Chapter 484, Return of 10,000 Swords. A sword broke through the air, and the sharpness it exuded pointed at the center of Feng Lin's brow, brimming with destructive killing intent. An instant later, Feng Lin could feel a piercing pain near his forehead, as though a needle was stabbing him from there. There were no greetings exchanged, nor superfluous words spoken. He didn't even see the face of the opponent. Ever since he took the first step onto the 9,000 level, the sword simply shot toward him just like that, brimming with incomparable sharpness. This entire level seemed to have become the domain of the sword. Any outsiders would instantly attract lightning-fast killing attacks the instant they got near. This sword was so quick to the extent that it was difficult for anyone to react. Feng Lin stared at that shining light as his thoughts spun rapidly. It felt like time had completely frozen at this moment. This was an extremely miraculous state. The movements of everything seemed to slow down by 10,000 times, becoming as slow as a crawling turtle. The sword that was seemingly so fast that it had no shadows had its true appearance finally displayed before his eyes. Feng Lin wasn't taken aback. This was his thought processing speed being enhanced, which caused everything else to slow down. He abruptly moved. His hands lifted slightly into the air, with his index and middle finger pressed together. Ding! The sound of metal and stone colliding echoed out. An exquisite-looking sword was grabbed by Feng Lin's fingers, and it had stopped moving now. His amount of force and reaction time was simply perfect. It was like that tiny sword had come to an agreement with him to rest within his fingers. Bzz, bzz, bzz. The sentience of the sword was startling, like a living thing. Although it was now under control, it was still humming unceasingly and struggling to break free. Gotcha. Feng Lin's fingers exerted force slightly, completely crushing the tiny sword, causing it to transform into strands of sword chi which dissipated into thin air. However, he didn't have time to catch his breath. Countless stars twinkled before his eyes. They shot over like the pouring rain, sparkling like the resplendent starry space. Each beam of starlight was actually an incomparably sharp burst of sword chi. They were as agile as little birds, yet they contained immeasurably sharp killing intent. In an instant, Feng Lin's surroundings were filled with sword light which gathered and formed a giant formation, trapping Feng Lin solidly within. Monkey King Domain. Feng Lin spread his arms wide and instinctively activated his domain. It was like an invisible wall of iron and steel securely protected the area around him. There were no gaps in this at all. Chi chi chi. The bursts of sword chi gushed over and slammed into his domain, causing sparks to manifest and leaving behind clear sword scars. Although he continuously channeled his heart monkey force to repair the cracks that appeared on the wall, Feng Lin still felt extremely suppressed. Yet, Feng Lin wasn't bothered about his. He cast his gaze over. He could see a lanky figure with his hair rolled up in a bun standing in the air. This figure was peering down at him imperiously. This man was clad in long robes of the ancient Huaxia style, exuding the demeanor of an ancient cultivator, like he was a sword immortal that had walked out from ancient historical scrolls. His body stood straight and his entire being was like a supremely sharp sword, emitting a tyrannical and overbearing aura that was extremely eye-piercing. As expected of the boss on the 9,000th level. The cultivation of this man was at the elite adept realm, and he possessed the abilities of legendary sword immortals. His combat strength was terrifying to the extreme, and he could be considered a very formidable enemy. Feng Lin's expression was solemn. This couldn't be allowed to continue. The sword chi was tyrannically sharp and seemed unending in nature. The bursts of sword chi completely enveloped him, and even until now, he had no way to even touch a corner of this opponent's robes. It wasn't his style to suffer attacks passively without retaliating. Explode. Feng Lin's heart stirred and his Monkey King domain suddenly manifested like majestic chi waves that gushed out in all directions. This caused the entire space to distort, temporarily causing the sword formation to dissipate. Swish. A figure took the opportunity and rushed out from the trapped area, directly shooting straight for the pagoda lord standing in the air. That person glanced over, his eyes as cold as ice. All of a sudden, his hands formed a gesture as he pierced his fingers over. This stance seemingly created a divine sword that could rival the heavens and was capable of tearing the earth apart. Return of 10,000 swords. Bzz, bzz, bzz. All of a sudden, the humming of swords filled the air. What noise is that? The spectators were all stunned. That host shouted loudly, causing the atmosphere here to be heightened. Next, everyone please observe closely. This is the ultimate technique of sword immortal Lu Xinyang which made him famous. The technique is named the Return of 10,000 Swords. He awakened a mythological gene that allowed him to be peerless against rivals of the same realm. He is walking on the mythological path of sword immortals, and is capable of controlling swords and riding them to fly in the air. His attacks are the most overbearing, and this move isn't something ordinary people can witness. Everyone must look properly and not miss anything. When everyone heard that, a commotion was instantly created. Their gazes were all fixed on the battlefield as they focused their attention completely. Although the sword chi caused their eyes to feel a faint piercing pain, they couldn't care less now. Their faces were filled with fanaticism and agitation. That's a Huaxia sword immortal. Controlling swords and riding them to fly. taking the heads of his enemies within 1,000 li. This is undoubtedly the most impressive and stylish of all mythological paths. Sword immortal, I love you. The sounds of admiration rang out endlessly as the excited cries by females could be heard along with them. At this moment, Feng Lin inclined his head and glanced over. He could see that the bursts of sword chi had gathered into a torrent and were like the tidewaters gushing over, wanting to surround him. 3 heads 6 arms. Feng Lin's figure trembled as he activated the 3 heads 6 arms technique. His 6 fists were clenched tightly, and they were like hammers of the thunder god, smashing at his target with overwhelming might. Bang, bang, bang. The force generated was tyrannical. His punches were like angry thunder, his body as tough as unbreakable stone. Feng Lin's 3 pairs of eyes stared at the surroundings as his punches created countless fist shadows. He focused completely on guarding himself. The numerous bursts of sword chi were blasted into dissipation. Sword immortal Lu Xingyang stood in the air with his eyes narrowed. A gleam of sharpness flashed within along with cold cruelty. His sword fingers then changed their gesture. The sword chi torrent became even more violent and the sword chi within multiplied. The divine sword continuously slashed over, wanting to tear everything apart, destroying this world completely. Chi, chi, chi. Despite the fact that countless fist shadows were formed from the speed of Feng Lin's punches, there were inevitably still gaps. The sword chi gushed forth, entering from every crack, displaying their sharpness. Despite the fact that Feng Lin's stone monkey body had long reached the grand completion phase, white scars still formed upon contact against the raging sword chi. He could feel the piercing pain. Many little drops make up an ocean. The tiny wounds would eventually add up. Even his steel-like skin was sliced open as droplets of his blood flowed out. Feng Lin's entire person was baptized by the sword chi torrent and became a bloody man. As expected of sword immortals. They were known to have the #1 combat strength among their peers in ancient Huaxia myths and legends. Feng Lin coldly snorted. He no longer planned to hold back and decided to unleash his full strength. His 6 fists manifested a violet-red fire spark, which contained a heat that could burn anything in the world. This 3 heads 6 arms form of his in addition to the power of the earth fiend True Fire. For a time, Feng Lin transformed into the fire god of the legends. He unleashed a flurry of punches, causing explosive booms to echo out in space. Each punch caused numerous fiery shadows to manifest. They then linked together and formed a sea of fire, which then collided with the sword chi torrent. For a time, the space in which the two of them fought was split into 2 halves. One half was glowing red with destructive flames, the other half was inundated with sword chi. The 2 figures were like 2 extremes of the heavens and earth, standing at each side and staring at each other. This entire space was split into 2, like the rivers of Jing and Wei that were separated clearly. The energy waves collided, causing mutual destruction. A pitch-black area was left behind. This area absorbed all light and filled the hearts of those who saw it with fear. Unknowingly, silence flooded the battlefield. Even the spectators were holding their breaths as they watched the battlefield for any signs of commotion. No one dared to even breathe loudly. Feng Lin's heart couldn't help but sink when he discovered the rapid consumption of the genetic force in his body. Although he was walking on the perfect Sun Wukong mythological path, which allowed him to be peerless against those in the same realm, and even granted him the capabilities to jump levels and fight against others who were stronger than him, the disparity of their cultivation bases was still ultimately there. If he continued fighting this way, what they were competing was the expenditure of each other's genetic force. The one with deeper reserves and a more robust genetic force would be the ultimate victor. Fighting against an elite adept already caused him to be at a disadvantage, let alone the fact that his opponent was a sword immortal that was proclaimed as having the strongest combat strength among those in the same realm. If things continued like this, it would be too taxing for him. Feng Lin's heart stirred as an idea flashed through his mind. He then instantly channeled his spirit force into the measureless divine metal cudgel. Grow, grow, grow. The metal cudgel was like an inflated balloon, expanding rapidly. Rumble. The energy waves were broken apart. The metal cudgel expanded rapidly, becoming a huge towering pillar in the blink of an eye as it swept forth with unblockable momentum. MHM? That sword immortal Lu Xingyang instantly snorted when he saw this. He could no longer maintain the calm look on his face. His figure swayed as he transformed into a burst of sword light that arced through the air with lightning speed. Sky Evasion Sword Art. Rumble. Feng Lin's 6 arms wielded his cudgel. He used pure strength to sweep aside the sword chi, sweeping aside everything in his way. However, the opponent before him was now in the state of one with the sword. He had become ethereal yet was as quick as lightning, containing incomparable sharpness. Lu Xingyang moved through the gaps of the cudgel attacks and wasn't injured at all. He even found the opportunity to launch counterattacks occasionally. The sword chi was even more intense than before. Feng Lin's heart sank as he looked at this scene. This further verified his earlier conjecture. Could this be the Lu Dongbin's mythological path? Chapter 485, Lu Dongbin Mythological Path. The 8 immortals of the Upper Cave, Ancestor Lu is the first among them. The 8 immortals of the Upper Cave were the 8 legendary immortals. They were saints of the human world and were skilled in all sorts of magical techniques. Among them were Tai Guili, Zhang Guilao, He Xiangu, etc. But the strongest one out of the 8 immortals was none other than Ancestor Lu, Lu Dongbin. Because Ancestor Lu had cultivated the sword immortal Dao that was also known as the #1 combat technique within the heavens and earth. Lu Dongbin with his Daoist title as the Pure Yang Child became famous due to his cultivation as a sword immortal. The sword immortal faction originated from Ancestor Lu. Everyone called him the Sword Ancestor or Sword Immortal. And according to one of the most ancient legends, it was said that Lu Dongbin was one of the Taoism heavenly emperors. His title was the Donghua Emperor, and he entered reincarnation because mortal desires stirred his heart. All in all, Lu Dongbin could be considered a first-tier immortal in the Huaxia mythological system. He was on the same level as the great sage equal to heavens, Sun Wukong, Erlang deity, Yang Jian, and third Prince Neza. Was this man also a cultivator of a paragon mythological path? Feng Lin's eyes flared with surging battle intent. At this moment, this Lu Xingyang was in the state of one with the sword. His entire person transformed into a thin beam of sword light that arced through space like flitting shadows. He evaded through the gaps created by Feng Lin's attack. Swish! Feng Lin's cudgel force flowed forth in waves, forming a tight circle that was completely seamless, forcefully dissipating the sword chi torrent. However, he didn't have the time to relax. Swish! His eyes narrowed. He suddenly saw a faint white scar appearing in the space enclosed by his cudgel attacks. This white scar was like a gap. At the next instant, a figure like a fish in the sea shot out. The beam of sword light was aimed right at him. The sword was already 3 inches away from the center of his brows. The sharp intent seemed unbreakable, capable of completely slashing everything before it into pieces. Feng Lin could clearly sense the absolute coldness from the sword edge. It could break through everything. An intense sense of danger rose in his heart. Unblockable. I won't be able to block this sword attack. Feng Lin instantly made a judgment. This was such a sharp attack. Most probably, he wouldn't even be able to block it even with his stone monkey body. At this moment, the entire world seemed to stop. At the moment between life and death, Feng Lin didn't have time to do too many actions. He could only act on instinct. Grow. 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 His body abruptly expanded in form, growing taller by a head, and his position shifted slightly. Pooh. The sharp sword penetrated through his body, causing his blood to flow. MHM? Although this sword attack succeeded, Lu Xinyang's expression was one of puzzlement. This attack that would surely succeed was targeted at the vital part, Feng Lin's forehead. But now, his sword had only penetrated Feng Lin's shoulder. This off-target attack had surpassed his anticipation. Rumble. Two fists suddenly blasted toward him from the left and right. Lu Xinyang didn't have time to think too much. His body swayed slightly as he entered the gap in space once more, transforming again into a beam of light. Feng Lin pressed one of his hands onto the wound on his shoulder. His expression turned extremely gloomy. At that moment of imminent peril, he had used the transformation technique of the heaven-earth law manifestations, growing taller by a head to avoid his vital part from being struck. However, the danger wasn't averted yet. Feng Lin stood in his original location as he stared in all directions. Monkey King Domain. His 6 arms each folded hand seals as he focused on guarding himself. The magic hand seals manifested runes that formed into great corporeal barriers. At the next moment, formless spirit force emanated outward, sweeping through everything. It was tough for anything to avoid his detection. Chi. Another light sound rang out. Feng Lin suddenly saw his previously invincible Monkey King domain being broken as a figure shot through space, arriving at the area 1 meter away from him. A pair of eyes filled with emotionless coldness appeared in his vision, and a beam of sword light shot over, piercing forth directly. In an instant, Feng Lin suddenly got the chills as his hair stood on their end. His heart felt a piercing pain as the sword chi drew near. The sword chi was already so terrifying at a distance, how much more terrifying would it be if it managed to pierce him? Rumble. Feng Lin punched out frantically. 2 powerful punches blasted over. The fists and sword collided. Lu Xinyang instantly retreated backward. But Feng Lin felt a piercing pain in his fist. His fingers were dripping with blood and his wound was so deep that his bones could be seen. His expression couldn't help but turn gloomier when he realized this. Sky Evasion Sword Art. It is truly powerful indeed. This sword art was rumored to be a sword art passed down by Lu Dongbin himself to the mortal world in the legends. He wanted to direct people to the path of immortality. It emphasized the art of evasion and had the unfathomability aspect of ghosts and demons. It was extremely suitable to slay devils and demons. Lu Dongbin mythological path was undoubtedly also a paragon mythological path. Could it be that this Lu Xinyang managed to discover the cultivation art of the sky evasion sword art through the mythological memories? If this was the case, things would really be troublesome. Controlling the sword, flying in the sky. Of all martial arts in the world, speed was invincible. Pure strength might be able to suppress everything, but Feng Lin's strength hadn't reached the extent where he could destroy the entire swath of space yet. He wasn't able to prevent this unfathomable sword art from evading through the gaps in space. For a time, Feng Lin was forced into a passive state. He was helpless to retaliate. The spectators were all in a climax, letting out roars of excitement. First time. This is the first time Spirit Slayer Lin Feng is in a position of absolute disadvantage. Upon facing Sword Immortal Lu Xinyang's immortal sword, he is completely helpless and can't even retaliate. How powerful, Lin Feng had been victorious throughout all his fights. Seems like this time around, he has finally encountered an opponent he couldn't defeat. This time, he would surely lose if he doesn't unleash all his abilities. So what even if he unleashed them? An adept challenging an elite adept. Him being able to go to the 9,000th level is already a feat that surpasses everyone's imagination. Countless distracting voices echoed in his ears, many of them were filled with contempt for Feng Lin. Maybe, these people were jealous when they saw how easily he cleared the previous levels. Now that he finally encountered a difficult opponent, they were silently feeling joyful in their hearts. Even the host was influenced. Yet, Feng Lin ignored everything, he didn't care for their comments at all. Why should he explain his actions to others? Right now, his 3 pairs of eyes were staring at the sword silhouette that kept evading into the gaps in space, flickering in and out of existence. His heart sank to the bottom of the valley as he was trying to rapidly think of a solution. Swish, swish, swish. The sword light kept flashing. His opponent clearly understood the essence of guerrilla warfare. He would hide and attack with a highly devastating blow, showing no mercy at all. Every time he appeared, Lu Xingyang would target Feng Lin's vital parts. Things were extremely dangerous for Feng Lin. Even though he was intentionally on his guard, he wasn't able to dodge all the attacks and was injured repeatedly. The many wounds he suffered would eventually add up. Even his stone monkey body, which had undergone tempering, was slashed open and bleeding as well. Through all the attacks, Feng Lin was still incomparably calm, staring carefully at the flashes of sword light before him as his thoughts spun rapidly. The speed of sword immortals was always number 1. Feng Lin couldn't touch his opponent, nor could he pursue him. He could only wait here and get attacked passively. If he wanted to break this situation, there were only 2 methods. The first was to attack with overwhelming might and make it so that his opponent had no place to evade to, forcing his opponent to receive his attack head-on. However, this wasn't realistic at all. Right at the start, his cultivation realm was 1 major realm lower than his opponent. If he wanted to compare strength, his amount of genetic force wasn't as vast as his opponent. In that case, only 1 solution was left. And that was to be faster than his opponent. Comparing speed? Feng Lin mumbled to himself. His thoughts flashed as a beam of light shot out from his heart. Sword immortals were known as one of the fastest types of immortals. Thus, to the vast majority of people, being faster than a sword immortal was simply the fantasy of a fool. However, Feng Lin knew that in ancient myths and legends, Sun Wukong was also famed for his speed. He had an idea. His eyes flashed as he recalled the previous wondrous bout of comprehension he had. The entirety of his Monkey King domain was now focused beneath his feet. The basic particles of cosmos were drawn over from the surroundings and congregated to the extreme before abruptly exploding forth. Rumble. A magnificent burst of flames trailed behind his feet. A figure executed a somersault, rising through the air and transformed into a beam of light that moved with lightning speed, pursuing after the flying sword which his opponent had transformed into. Feng Lin had activated the somersault cloud. Chapter 486, Somersault Cloud. A single somersault could travel 108,000 miles. The Monkey King domain could control everything in the universe. In an instant, Feng Lin comprehended the method of using the somersault cloud. He used his all-invasive heart monkey force to control the most basic particles of the universe, and transform them into a ready-to-erupt state. He then made use of the rebound force to produce a large amount of energy to soar into the air, reaching cosmic speed in an instant. For a time, his figure vanished instantly from his original location. He transformed into a golden shadow, zooming across space and leaving behind after images. The energy flow formed from the ejection of ions left behind a long trail of flames. From afar, it was as resplendent as a cluster of nebulae. What? The sword silhouette speeding through the gaps in space let out an exclamation. Lu Xingyang was filled with disbelief. But even before he could react, a cudgel blow instantly struck down, dispersing his sword light. The attacks of Feng Lin arrived before he knew it. The somersault cloud's speed was also known to be at the extreme level within the 3 realms. It wasn't in any way inferior to the sword evasion skill his opponent was using. What was known as lightning arrived before the ears could hear. This was precisely it. Right now, Lu Xingyang was encountering the situation Feng Lin faced earlier. The ion ejection of his somersault cloud instantly boosted Feng Lin's speed to sublight mode. Under such speed, even an ordinary cudgel strike would become terrifying to the extreme. The vast might contained within his cudgel seemingly enveloped this entire space. Pressure akin to a giant mountain bore down, causing the entire space to tremble. Even for Lu Xingyang, who could control his sword and soar into the air, now that this attack was targeting him, he wasn't able to evade in time. Sky evasion sword art, sword control lightning shock. Sizzle. Sword chi gushed forth, crackling like lightning. His speed abruptly increased by 3 times, rushing to the side, instantly evading the sure-kill attack from Feng Lin. However, the cudgel force converged together and swept outward, sweeping aside the sword chi. A moment later, a crack appeared in the sword light as a figure appeared. This figure's countenance was pale and his aura was ice-cold. But he didn't have the time to say anything. At the next moment, another cudgel attack slammed down at him. He could only instantly transform back into the beam of evasive sword light once more. Chi. The space cracked and a white scar suddenly appeared. A figure brimming with lighting-imbued sword chi suddenly appeared behind Feng Lin and directly shot forward, aiming to pierce Feng Lin's back. Feng Lin was in a situation of imminent peril. He just so coincidentally did a somersault backward and evaded the attack, preventing his vital part from being stabbed. He turned his head and unleashed another blow instantly. Bang! The sword and cudgel collided, causing sparks to emit. The powerful shockwaves swept through the surroundings, causing scars to appear on the ground. The two of them separated at the instant of the clash and rapidly moved away. After that, one pursued while the other fled. They were dodging to the left and right and launching surprise attacks at the other. For a time, everyone only felt their vision being dazzled. The two of them had reached the absolute limit of speed in the human world. They each transformed into a beam of light and broke through the binding of space. They disappeared and appeared again in different locations instantly, clashing with each other and separating again and again. Even the most advanced observing equipment would find it tough to capture their movements clearly. There were only after images. One person was within a ball of sword light, flickering in and out of space. The other kept somersaulting, causing a particle storm. He was so fast that he was shadowless. What a quick speed, but why does this Feng Lin only know how to do somersaults? He resembles a monkey doing circus trick. Everyone glanced at each other, feeling extremely puzzled in their hearts. What sort of powerful divine technique required one to keep somersaulting to execute it? Most probably, only Feng Lin knew why. As for why he kept somersaulting, there was only one reason. It might not look glam, but the speed of using the somersault cloud was simply too fast. Extreme speed would cause extremely powerful inertia, making the possessor have an extremely hard time to change direction, and not to mention the immense burden on one's body. By somersaulting, he could adjust his body and shift directions, minimizing the inertia to the maximum. Bang, bang, bang. Their speed reached a realm that surpassed the human vision. From everyone's view, the two of them had already clashed countless times in an instant. One was a sword immortal with a tyrannically sharp flying sword that could slash through everything. The other was a stone monkey riding on a somersault cloud, wielding his metal cudgel with a terrifying force. In just the blink of an eye, they had exchanged several hundreds of blows. Although they were only two people, their speed made it so that there were thousands of afterimages clashing against each other at the same moment. Sparks flew everywhere from the collision of sword and cudgel. It was like both Feng Lin and Lu Xingyang had millions of clones. The fight between the two of them was like two armies of equal power clashing with each other. From the view of the spectators, it looked like a fight between a dragon and a tiger. However, only the two combatants knew how dangerous things truly were. As their speed increased, reaching extreme speed, the flow of time would also be reduced. An instant of time in the view of spectators had become extremely long and drag out in the eyes of the two combatants. That ethereal beam of sword light earlier finally revealed its true form before Feng Lin's eyes. Right now, the two of them were evenly matched. Wreaking havoc in the heavenly court. Feng Lin chased after the beam of light. His body hung upside down and the cudgel in his hand weaved a circle, surrounding Lu Xingyang with countless cudgel shadows. Feng Lin exuded an invincible might as though he could break through everything. At this moment, he truly felt like that stone monkey in the legends. His cudgel covered an impossibly vast area, brimming with the aura of destruction. Lu Xinyang was no longer as calm as before. He could clearly sense a killing intent strong enough to destroy the heavens and devastate the earth from the cudgel attacks. If he got hit by this move, his body would instantly become a paste. The second stance of the sky evasion sword art, formless wind evasion. The sword chi became endless, transforming into countless shadows that gushed forth with the sword chi. The loudest sound is silence, the largest object has no form. For a time, the surging strands of sword chi maximized his speed, converging together into formless sword chi that was so tightly packed that it was like a torrential rainstorm flooding over. Swish swish swish. Sword chi and cudgel force collided with each other and were neutralized a moment later. The two of them separated directly after their clash. Feng Lin instantly reacted. Great sage stirring the seas. His cudgel swept out, stirring the space. The boundless air flows transformed into spatial vortexes from his actions, wanting to engulf everything in the surroundings into them. The third stance of the sky evasion sword art, cloud evasion lightning melody. The sword chi spread out, becoming like clouds and mist. Humming sound of electricity and the sharpness of the sword chi could be felt. A sea of clouds churned. And a moment later, the space trembled from the impact as chaos reigned supreme. Breaking the furnace open. A thick fist as straight as a heavenly pillar completely smashed apart the heaven and earth furnace. The sky cannot cover my eyes, the earth cannot cover my heart. The seventh stance of the sky evasion sword art, billion sword heart. Swish, swish, swish. The immortal sword whistled, producing billions of strands of sword chi. It continued to split apart, 1 into 2, 2 into 3, 3 into countless strands. This was an extremely tyrannical art. The other was a direct attack powered by brute force. These two methods of extremes collided together, instantly causing countless sparks to manifest. The sparks were as resplendent as starfire. For a time, the two of them unleashed all their techniques and moves, causing the spectators to be dazzled. Unknowingly, the spectators were all already in a daze. Their mouths were wide open, but they didn't say anything. It felt like they were watching a mythological battle. What a great battle! As they continued battling, the final decisive moment soon came. It was the moment to decide victory and defeat. Chapter 487, Late Phase of the Adept Realm. Hoo. Feng Lin panted, his breathing grew incomparably heavy. Ever since he entered the heaven-reaching pagoda, this was the first time he was so fatigued to this extent. As expected of the boss for the 9,000th level. This pagoda lord was a cultivator at the elite adept level. Feng Lin knew that he had truly met a formidable opponent. This man was also walking on a paragon mythological path. Even if his opponent's understanding of his mythological path might not be as deep as his opponent had the advantage of being a major realm higher. Just this fact alone was unimaginably terrifying. Upon sensing the dried-up genetic force in his body, Feng Lin knew that he was now like an empty lamp that was completely drained. But as he looked at the dimmed sword light of his opponent, he knew that his opponent was the same as well. The two of them glanced at each other. Even at this stage, Lu Xinyang's gaze was as cold and sharp as a sword. But there was no longer any contempt in his eyes when he looked at Feng Lin. Both of them were experts in their own right and naturally understood the situation now. Victory and defeat lie in a single moment. Lu Xinyang lowered his eyes and no longer moved, just standing in the air. Although he wasn't moving, the space around him seemed to be trembling. With him in the center, an invisible sharpness emanated outward. Each wave of sharpness was like a real sword, slashing the void into pieces. Slashing sounds rang out as black scars visible to the naked eyes could be seen. Lu Xinyang simply stood there. It was like he became a heaven-towering divine sword that hung suspended in the air. His aura continued to rise, striking fear in the hearts of everyone. One sword, flying immortal. All of a sudden, he moved. From a state of stillness to a state of extreme speed only took him an instant. His movements seemed slow to the spectators with his stance and move clearly displayed for all to see. It was because his speed had reached the extreme limit, causing it to produce an illusion of slowness. He became one with the sword and floated in the air. This divine sword came from the heavens, powerful and wondrous to the peak. Everything the tip of the sword pointed to would freeze. There was no way for its target to evade. In an instant, Feng Lin felt a sense of danger in his heart. Boundless killing intent descended on him. Feng Lin also acted, yet his move was just an ordinary cudgel attack, cleaving right down the middle. His metal cudgel expanded rapidly and smashed down like it was a giant pillar from the heavens. Adding genetic point. Sun Wukong gene +1. A free genetic point was added to the Sun Wukong gene, strengthening it to 6 points. Upon doing so, everything changed in an instant. Currents of warmth flowed from the depths of his body and circulated through his entire system. The mountain spring, which represented his energy that was long drained, now began to replenish itself as vibrant life energy flooded forth. Feng Lin instantly felt as though his fatigued body was soaking in spring water. Powerful energy circulated through his body, injecting new power into his cells and gradually causing him to recover his peak state. And now, Feng Lin didn't hold back. He channeled the entirety of his heart monkey force into the metal cudgel. The force of his attacks was enhanced by 3 times, 10 times, 30 times, 100 times. This ordinary-looking cudgel attack suddenly contained enough force to split apart the heavens and earth, which bore down onto this space. A sword and a cudgel. The sword was ominously sharp, gleaming with sharpness. They were sharply opposed to each other with neither prepared to give an inch of advantage. In the countless pairs of eyes of the spectators, which were wide open, the current scene was like Mars just collided into Earth. Silence flooded the area. Under the attacks of two extremes, the time seemed to have completely stopped. Within the sword silhouette, the lanky figure there was extremely shocked. His eyes were wide open as he felt a powerful backlash that was strong enough to topple mountains and overturn seas. It felt unblockable. Earlier, he had gone all out with his attack, no longer had any power left to use for defense. At the next instant, he was instantly engulfed by the energy tides of Feng Lin's attack. A figure fell backward and landed onto the ground, completely devoid of strength and energy to fight back. Genetic potential plus 9,200. The spectators were all completely dumbfounded. Their jaws dropped for the time it took an incense stick to burn before the cheering began to spread through the audience. The victor is actually the spirit slayer Lin Feng. The dragged-out voice ignited the atmosphere of the entire place. Awesome. An adept could actually defeat a sword cultivator at the elite adept realm. This is simply unbelievable. Is this the true strength of spirit slayer Lin Feng? Investigate him. We must investigate him for sure. His mythological path is too powerful. Check his origins, we cannot allow such a powerful mythological path to land in the hands of others. Feng Lin won despite being the weaker party, and he instantly caused exclamations of admiration and probing by others. And as the victor, no one noticed that Feng Lin's hands were trembling slightly before he forced them to relax and maintain an unmoving state. Ultimately, he still couldn't go all the way through. Feng Lin silently mused. In truth, he won this battle partly due to luck. If Sun Wukong mythological path could allow one to unleash their mental and spirit transformations to the max, Lu Dongbin mythological path would allow one to sharpen their sword chi to the max. Both were paragon mythological paths and were supposedly equal. Victory and defeat hinged on one's methods, cultivation realm, and their wills. Even Feng Lin himself didn't have the confidence that he would be able to win for sure. He depended on the after effects of adding a free genetic point, allowing him to instantly recover and defeat his exhausted opponent. Just the boss of the 9,000th floor was already so strong. If he wished to climb up further, it would only be more difficult. His current strength was still insufficient for him to do so. Earlier, because of his effortless victories, Feng Lin felt that the heaven-reaching pagoda was nothing impressive. But right now, his arrogance had completely dissipated. He didn't waste any moment and instantly started to cultivate. His cultivation gene was activated alongside the grand-grade heavenly immortal art. His heart monkey force gushed out, enveloping the entire area. The spiritual chi in this area all belonged to him and he could use them freely. What's going on? Where's the spiritual chi of heavens and earth? The spirit particles in the air become zero? What just happened? Without spiritual chi, how can I cultivate? Feng Lin seemed to have transformed into a bottomless black hole and was frenziedly absorbing spiritual chi. The entirety of the spiritual chi in this level was completely drained dry. The cultivators here were all extremely frantic. And as the person who started all this, Feng Lin was completely immersed in his cultivation. Mythological genes were tangible images of humanity's cultivation talent. After awakening them, one's potential would be fully displayed. And adding cultivation and hard work to the innate mythological genes, one could cultivate to become an immortal by absorbing the spiritual chi of heavens and earth to strengthen their bodies. Xiantian, innate, and Hotian, acquired, were like yin and yang. They had to combine together to form the grand supreme, Tai Chi, complementing each other to allow one's cultivation speed to increase rapidly. Feng Lin had obtained 2 free Hotian genetic points previously. He decisively added them to both his Hotian genes respectively, causing his life information to change again. Name, Feng Lin. Vitality stat, 82,900. Hotian genes, Sun Wukong gene X7, Cultivation gene X5. Heaven genes, Monkey King gene X10, Dao Heart gene X10. Genetic potential, 2,600. His vitality stat officially broke through the 80,000 mark. Regardless of his mythological gene level or his vitality stat, he officially entered the late phase of the adept realm. He was not far away from the peak phase at all. His next step would be the elite adept realm. If he could achieve that, given how tyrannically powerful the Sun Wukong mythological path was, he would definitely become one of the strongest cultivators of humanity in a single leap. When he thought of this, Feng Lin was filled with anticipation. He stood up and walked out of his residence abruptly, moving to his next targeted destination. Chapter 488, Science Freak. Within a dim room, there were numerous equipment and apparatus arranged on display, flaring with red, green, blue and all sorts of color, illuminating the room with their glows. The room had a sinister and terrifying atmosphere as a result of the glows. In the depths of the dim room, a figure lay prone on a table and busied himself. He would occasionally emit hoarse-sounding laughter. "Master, there's a stranger here paying a visit." All of a sudden, a cold mechanical voice rang out, breaking his train of thoughts. "Who is it? Given my status in the heaven-reaching pagoda, only extremely few people have the authority to see me. Only those who pass through the 9,000th level can do so. Who is it exactly? If he is someone ordinary, just chase him away." That person inclined his head, revealing a wizened face. His bloodshot eyes rolled about rapidly. His name is Lin Feng. He came to the heaven-reaching pagoda 15 days ago and started from the 7,000th level. He just defeated Sword Immortal Lu Zhenyang and officially passed the 9,000th level. The AI reported Feng Lin's concealed identity and information. So it is him. The middle-aged man's eyes rolled in their sockets. Spirit Slayer Lin Feng? A cultivator walking on a mental/spirit-type mythological path. I also intended to look for him, but I didn't expect him to come here on his own. What an excellent coincidence. He slowly stood up and walked to the entrance. In the darkness, a squirming worm-like creature's silhouette appeared, leaving behind slimy traces on the ground that didn't dry even after a long time. At this moment, Fong Lin stood outside an independent villa located in a remote region, waiting quietly. The heaven-reaching pagoda was extremely vast and was 10,000 levels tall. The space at each level was like a brand new world. There were even many natural sceneries that were simulated by human technology. Mountains and rivers were everywhere. The needs of everyone was available. Naturally, the price one had to pay to stay in such a luxurious and beautiful location was also extremely huge. Ordinary people would never be able to afford this. And Fong Lin found out that the person currently staying in this villa was none other than the famous geneticist of the heaven-reaching pagoda, Kennard Fainap. It was said that his attainments in mythological gene theory had reached an extremely high level, and he alone had contributed over 30+ genetic sequence diagrams, with Shantian level being the highest. Shantian level genetic sequence diagrams could already allow one to climb all the way to the elite adept realm. Hence, Kennard's status in the heaven-reaching pagoda was extraordinarily high. He was known as the #1 genetic grandmasters, and the information about him was highly confidential. Only by passing through the 9,000th level would one have the authority to know the identity and information about this man. Thus, after defeating the pagoda lord on the 9,000th level, Fong Lin gained enough authority to find out more about the creator of the genetic sequence diagrams he had seen. However, it was a bit troublesome that this Kennard was a hermit-like scientific freak. He had an aloof personality and usually wouldn't get close to people. Fong Lin had no idea if he would be able to meet with Kennard personally this time around or not. If he couldn't, it seemed that he had to use some special methods. "Mr. Fong Lin, please enter." Just as he was musing to himself, a strange mechanical voice rang out and the door automatically opened. A Caucasian with a huge muscular frame walked in. He was clad elegantly and took the initiative to come over and welcome Fong Lin. "So it is the famous spirit slayer, Mr. Lin Fong. It's my honor that you would choose to come and visit me." "Grandmaster Kennard, you are too polite. I came here because I wish to have an exchange with you regarding the mysteries and secrets of genetic sequence diagrams," replied Fong Lin politely. He didn't beat around the bush. "Oh? An exchange?" Kennard was astonished. He actually heard Fong Lin saying the word exchange, instead of a learning from him. Interesting. One must know that he was the #1 genetic grandmaster in the heaven-reaching pagoda. Now, there was actually someone who spoke of the word exchange before him? Did this Lin Fong think that he was his equal? This Fong Lin was truly confident. Where did his courage come from? If he didn't know that this man was a powerful warrior walking on an extremely rare mythological path, he would have long since driven Fong Lin away. Upon facing his astonishment, Fong Lin simply smiled. "That's right, I'm extremely interested in the Azura mythological path's genetic sequence diagram you deduced." However, the diagram only listed the steps that would lead one to the Grand Cultivator level, and there was no other path after that. If one wants to continue evolving, they would need to awaken the 3 heads 6 arms gene before they can complete the evolution of the Azura gene, right? The 3 heads 6 arms gene? What genes do you combine to form this? When Kennard heard this, he was stunned. Numerous thoughts flashed through his mind as he rapidly calculated. Data flowed like streams in his vision. The more he deduced, the more logical he felt this was. The answer Fong Lin had given was something he had thought of in the past. However, he had no way to deduce the following step, yet this Fong Lin actually gave the answer so easily. Could it be that this man wasn't just a powerful cultivator? He was also a grandmaster in the field of genetics? How did you know this? Where did you learn such knowledge from? Asked Kennard involuntarily, feeling extremely curious. The knowledge of mythological genes was considered the most valuable thing in this era, And there were only extremely few people who had high attainments in this field. This Phong Lin didn't only have a high cultivation base, but he even had such high attainments in mythological gene theory. Phong Lin calmly smiled, didn't reply and merely looked at the other person quietly. Why would he give out such knowledge for free? How could there be such a cheap thing in the universe? Staring at Phong Lin's expression, this Kennard also understood Phong Lin's intention. He then spoke in a low voice, "Please come with me." He took the initiative to step aside. Clearly, Phong Lin's earlier words had caused his heart to stir. From the outside, the room was pitch dark, resembling a scientific chamber used to create monsters like Frankenstein. It was like a bottomless hole that devoured everything. A mysterious and terrifying aura radiated from within, causing people to find it hard to enter. Phong Lin didn't mind it at all. He walked in confidently. The moment he entered, he immediately saw a bright light illuminating the interior. Rows of gigantic glass jars appeared before him, with transparent red fluid contained within them. Bubbles bubbled and numerous human figures could be seen floating within, with their eyes closed. Their noses and mouths were covered with breathing masks to maintain their life activity. Human experimentation. Phong Lin was startled. This familiar scene caused flashbacks in his mind. How could he not understand that this Kennard was actually performing human experimentation? Also, he discovered that these subjects were all brimming with immense vitality. Phong Lin wasn't a saint. He sighed at how wealthy this man was. Kennard was actually able to use genetic cultivators as subjects for his experiments. This was something the giant pharmaceutical company on Mars wasn't able to accomplish. Numerous rays scanned them constantly as though wanting to see clearly all the secrets within their bodies. The gigantic display screen in the distance clearly displayed the genetic sequence of each of the human subjects, forming many small-scale genetic trees with leaves akin to constellations shining resplendently. Each constellation was a mythological gene filled with boundless mysteries. Werewolf gene sequence diagram. Wild wolf gene X9 plus king gene X8 equals wolf king gene. Human gene X6 plus semibody gene X9 equals semi-human gene. Wolf king gene X7 plus semi-human gene X6 equals werewolf gene. Vampire gene sequence diagram. Bat gene X9 plus bloodthirst gene X6 equals blood-sucking bat gene. Ghost gene X6 plus apparition gene X7 equals specter gene. Blood-sucking bat gene X9 plus specter gene X7 equals vampire gene. Numerous inverted genetic sequence diagrams were drawn on paper, each resembling a tiny tree with leaves containing ancient mythological secrets and mysteries. Chapter 489, Gene Origin Laboratory. Welcome to my Gene Origin Laboratory. Upon seeing Phong Lin's gaze staring fixedly at the genetic sequence diagrams, Kennard smiled in satisfaction. Gene Origin Laboratory? When Phong Lin heard his words, he involuntarily felt somewhat bewildered. What an arrogant name. Mythological genes contained the ultimate secrets of ancient civilizations, but the information about them was simply too fragmented right now. It was hard to restore the pieces of information floating around back into a whole. This Kennard actually created this laboratory to trace the ultimate origin of mythological genes. He wasn't just a science freak, he was a science madman. Phong Lin didn't feel shocked but was happy instead. It seemed like his trip here was the correct choice. Seeing how confident Kennard was, he definitely had something genuine aces up his sleeves. At this moment, when Kennard saw the look of surprise on Phong Lin's face, pride appeared in his expression. He spoke, "Mythological genes are the origin of interstellar humanity's transcendence. They contain the ultimate secrets of ancient myths and legends. I created this laboratory because I wish to trace back the secrets of mythological genes through experimenting on countless cultivators. I want to find the truest truth of mythological genes." He laughed uproariously, his arrogance and madness stemmed from the depths of his heart. Phong Lin faintly understood him when he heard this. Genetic potential plus 1100, plus 1200. Plus 300. His eyes gleamed with silver light as his eyes scanned the various genetic sequence diagrams, adding them to his knowledge reserve. This act of his caused his genetic potential to surge. These all contained mythological paths humans could tread on and numerous secrets. As expected, he was correct. Feng Lin silently mused. These genetic sequence diagrams contained mythological paths that were extremely rare among interstellar humans. Only a relatively few people had managed to awaken such genes. There were countless types of mythological genes. After they combined and evolved into new types, they contained countless possibilities. Each self-created genetic sequence diagram was the crystallization of humanity's intelligence. They consisted of the essence of humanity's knowledge on mythological genes. Kennard was silently satisfied when he saw how surprised Feng Lin was. His eyes shone with a strange light that contained an unknown purpose. He didn't wait for Feng Lin to finish viewing the genetic sequence diagrams. He pointed his finger, and the genetic sequence diagrams displayed on the display screen in the lab completely vanished. Kennard turned and glanced at Feng Lin, with a smile that was not a smile on his face. Feng Lin instantly understood. He spoke in a low voice, "How can I obtain these pieces of valuable mythological knowledge?" Kennard smiled, "That will have to depend on whether you can take out mythological knowledge of an equal value and make my heart stir. Knowledge is priceless. And mythological knowledge is beyond priceless." Clearly, only mythological knowledge on the same level as these genetic sequence diagrams would be able to move someone like Kennard, a grandmaster in the field of mythological gene. This might be difficult for others, but to Feng Lin, who knew all about the ancient myths and legends of Earth, it wasn't so difficult. His heart stirred as he activated the genetic equation ability. His genetic potential then began to reduce quickly. Genetic potential minus 620, minus 690. 760. Very soon, a brand new genetic sequence diagram appeared. Feng Lin used his ID microchip to link and match, organizing them properly before he sent the information out to Kennard. Kennard received the information. When he opened up for a look, his expression drastically changed. Dracula gene? Bat gene X8 plus bloodthirst gene X6 equals blood-sucking bat gene. Ghost gene X6 plus apparition gene X7 equals specter gene. Blood-sucking bat gene X9 plus specter gene X7 equals vampire gene. Vampire gene X9 plus king gene X8 equals Dracula gene. Who was Dracula? Was he a higher origin source in the vampire mythological path? Countless thoughts flashed through Kennard's head. It was difficult for him to mask the shock on his face. A brand new complete genetic sequence diagram? This brat actually deduced all these so quickly. How could this be possible? As a genetic grandmaster, he was very clear on how difficult it was to create a brand new sequence for a mythological path. Each genetic sequence diagram had its own exclusive riddles. Their combinations were extremely complicated. Just a genetic branch had to be evolved from the most bottom level. There were basically tens of millions of basic level genes. The arrangement of the combinations, in addition to the different number of points needed to be added, caused the magnitude to be in the hundreds of millions of units. Even the difference of a single point might cause the entire combination to fail, acting in a way that defeats one's purpose. Mythological genes contained boundless secrets and were incomparably precise. One wouldn't be able to modify them easily. Even for Kennard, an extremely rare top-rated genetic grandmaster, he had to undergo billions of simulations via AI and conduct experiments personally to learn through each failure, before he could successfully probe out a correct genetic sequence diagram. Huge amounts of effort needed to be expended. Each complete mythological path was undoubtedly the crystallization of knowledge and intelligence. This was why, despite the interstellar humans had cultivated for so many years, they still hadn't completely cracked the code of mythological genes. Mythological knowledge was seriously fragmented. The evolutionary formula of each mythological gene was exceptionally complicated, and the amount of data needed to derive them might be even harder to grasp than the particles of the universe. Even in the interstellar era where science and technology were extremely developed, having an IDS with immense computing power, they still had no way to deduce all possibilities. At this moment, Feng Lin merely took a single glance at it and instantly deduced an evolutionary formula, raising the level of the vampire mythological path by one level. This caused Kennard to be stunned. Kennard was no longer as calm as before. His face was filled with astonishment. "I wonder if this can make you satisfied?" At this moment, Feng Lin smiled faintly at the side. Kennard instantly nodded. "Naturally, it can. Come with me." He took the lead and Feng Lin followed behind. They then entered a sealed corridor. The walls on both sides were filled with words and data, with double helixes hanging down from the ceiling on display. Each segment of genes emitted their light. They were clearly extraordinary. These are the secrets of the genes in the human body, a double helix structure. They are created from nucleotides. How did these carbon-based organics combine and form the genetic code for life? How did they evolve into the countless life forms in the universe? Do you understand all these? He pointed to the double helix's DNA structure as he spoke in excitement. "I've never thought about this before. Carbon life forms were incomparably weak, yet why do they have such high energy properties? Could it be due to microscopic dimensions?" Feng Lin spoke in a low voice. "That's right," Kennard replied. "According to the common knowledge in physics, it's well known that there are 11 dimensions in the universe. 7 of them collapsed into microcosm, but if they were expanded, even a tiny particle could be as large as a planet. The tiny particles could also store information and were in fact extremely huge. This is the origin source of mythological genes. It's a metaphysical existence. I call this soul branding. In truth, mythological genes aren't simply passed down by bloodlines. They are considered a type of soul inheritance." "I see. A world in a flower petal, a Bodhi in a single leaf. Is this the true origin of mythological genes? Stones from other hills may serve to polish the jade of this hill." Not matter if Kennard's words were the truth or not, it gave Feng Lin a spark of insight and opened a brand new door for him, allowing him to see a scenery he had never seen before. Genetic potential plus 2,200, plus 2,500, plus 2,600. It was like he understood some deep levels of secret. His genetic potential started to surge again. Feng Lin's wisdom also grew. He combined the mythological knowledge he knew along with the soul branding system Kennard conjectured. Now, he began to deduce things on a deeper level, finding out more about truths. For the supremely powerful existence in ancient times who had cultivated to unfathomably profound levels, they could imprint their transcendent force into the depths of their soul and pass their powers down to their descendants through soul branding. Spiritual nature was something that would last forever and indestructible. The genetic equation ability began to revolve rapidly as streams of data flashed through his eyes. The scene in his vision instantly changed. His insights broke through the macroscopic dimension and entered a more microscopic domain. Each mythological gene opened up before his eyes. There were countless runic patterns on each gene, and they resembled mazes, becoming the toughest and most mysterious formation in the world. They seemed perfect, magnificent in an indescribable way. Is this the origin source of power for mythological genes? Chapter 490, Gene Origin Source. Numerous runic patterns displayed before his eyes. They fused into complicated diagrams, becoming a complete entity. Each diagram innately emitted an inextinguishable light that connected the ancient to present, spanning across the long river of time and brimming with an undestroyable characteristic. Even after millions of years of replacements, countless generations of inheritance, it wouldn't fade in the slightest. Within them, secrets of ancient mythologies and legends were recorded. They would last forever and were simply waiting for people to wake them. At this instant, Feng Lin's heart and mind extended forth limitlessly, entering the most microscopic domain. He could see the 7 dimensions on the outside. There was no up or down, no left or right, no north or south. The laws in macroscopic dimensions all lost their meaning. Directions weren't enough to describe everything he saw. In the microscopic space domain, even the smallest particle would spread out completely. His spiritual perception could sense numerous long strings shining with dazzling light. They were like tentacles of God that extended forth endlessly, entering all dimensions and connecting all corners of the universe. The original source of mythological genes was completely displayed before Feng Lin's eyes. Each mythological gene was a miniature scale formation consisting of countless tiny strings that combined into the most complicated patterns in the universe. It was like a ball of tangled skin, unable to be cut, and seemed orderly although it was in chaos. Just staring at it for too long would cause one's vision to feel dazzled. The person staring would feel giddy as well. Yet, it contained the deepest secrets in the universe and would cause one to sink within, making it hard for them to extricate themselves. Genetic potential plus 1,800, plus 2,000, plus 100. The expansion of his mythological knowledge led to a surge in his genetic potential, which became a part of his cultivation foundation. String theory? An even deeper insight sprang forth from Feng Lin's heart. So, the endpoint of science was theology. The essence of mythological gene theory was actually a long-established theory of science, the string theory. The coiling of strings formed the most basic matter. And as for mythological genes, through restructuring and recombination of strings as a medium to record mythological information, they allowed the information to pass down through millions of years without fading. This was the most innate modification of the particles in the universe. Any type of energy could hardly destroy it. Mythology and science both pursued the limits of the universe's law. One was for transcending the universe, the other was to learn the truth. Both were contradicting energy systems, but they were simply different routes to the same destination. Their endpoint was the same. It was like two people on the same mountain. Both of them took different routes to get to the top, but their endpoint was the same. That was the peak of the mountain. Genetic potential plus 12,000. At this moment, Feng Lin's shackles of knowledge were completely broken, his knowledge of mythologies and science fused and became one. He could now clearly see the origin source of mythological genes. Moreover, his genetic potential increased by over 10,000 in a single shot, netting him a free Hotian genetic point. Lin Feng? Lin Feng, just when he was completely immersed in his comprehension, a voice from the outside woke him up. Feng Lin came to his senses and discovered that he was still standing in the laboratory. The genetic Grandmaster Kennard had an incomparably strange look on his face as he stared at him. Earlier, Feng Lin was simply too immersed and had forgotten where he was. This wasn't a wasted trip. Truly, this wasn't a wasted trip. Feng Lin mused joyfully. Just the insights he had gained already guaranteed that this wasn't a wasted trip. And what was on display earlier was only the surface of Kennard's accomplishments. If he could see more of Kennard's research, how much more would his genetic potential increase by? How much new genetic knowledge would he gain? Feng Lin looked forward to what he would obtain next. His heart was filled with anticipation, but his expression was as calm as ever. Only these? He calmly asked. Naturally not. Kennard let out a meaningful smile. However, if you wish to see more content of my research or my accomplishments, that would depend on the price you can pay. Oh. Feng Lin quietly laughed. The two of them stared at each other, the collision of their gaze seemed to generate sparks. Both were genetic grandmasters and pursued the profound secrets of mythological genes. All other treasures in the universe weren't considered too valuable for them. Only priceless mythological knowledge could move their hearts. Feng Lin was naturally very clear about this point. It seemed like things wouldn't work out unless he forked out a huge piece of meat today. He gritted his teeth, but his heart didn't really feel too much of a reluctance. Ever since he decided to look for this genetic grandmaster, all his requests were naturally within Phong Lin's anticipation. Genetic potential -680, -920-1090. He activated his genetic equation ability, and his recently increased genetic potential now began to reduce once more. The mythological genes were like the countless resplendent constellations in the skies. Under the starlight, they connected and formed numerous inverted little trees. They looked perfect and also resembled golden pyramids that led to transcendence. Phong Lin's hands rapidly pointed to the inverted trees as he transmitted the information. Three-tail fox genes genetic sequence diagram. Elf genes genetic sequence diagram. 100 ghosts genes genetic sequence diagram. Phong Lin gave over 10 genetic sequence diagrams in one shot, as though they were free items. Kennard only took a glance before his eyes widened in surprise again. Although these genetic sequence diagrams could only allow one to cultivate to the adept realm, it involved the various mythological systems of humanity. The three-tailed fox of the Huaxia mythological system, the long-lived elves of the Western mythological system, and the 100 ghosts Nightwalker of the Japanese mythological system. For a time, even a top-tier genetic grandmaster like Kennard also couldn't see through all the origins of these genetic sequence diagrams. His gaze was unconsciously filled with fear when he looked at Phong Lin. How old was this brat? He wasn't even 20 yet, right? It was one thing that he became an adept, but this Phong Lin also had such high attainments in the field of mythological knowledge. Which of the mythological cultivation powers had nurtured such a genius like him exactly? Or was he an old freak pretending to be young? For a time, countless speculations filled Kennard's heart. His expression was clouded over. At this moment, Phong Lin silently laughed when he saw the dumbfounded look on Kennard's face. He then spoke, "How about it? Are these things I provided enough to satisfy the conditions?" The shock on Kennard's face hadn't disappeared yet. He sank into deep thoughts, but he still shook his head after some time. Not enough yet. This isn't enough yet? This made Phong Lin bewildered. How valuable were genetic sequences? If these much were still not enough, how terrifying must the latest updated research information and accomplishments from this gene origin laboratory be? This actually made him feel even more excited. But if this Kennard was lying to him, he best not blame him for not being polite. How many more genetic sequence diagrams do you need? Phong Lin asked. It is far from enough, Kennard spoke. If you give me 30 more genetic sequence diagrams, you can only the results of my research 30 years ago. If you give me 60 more genetic sequence diagrams, you can see the results of my research 10 years ago. If you want to see my latest one, I need 100 genetic sequence diagrams. After speaking, he laughed as he stared at Phong Lin, feeling satisfied in his heart. I want to see where you can obtain so many genetic sequence diagrams from. The research results of my laboratory aren't so easily obtained. 100 genetic sequence diagrams were actually needed to obtain Kennard's newest research accomplishments? Phong Lin frowned. Although genetic sequence diagrams were valuable, with his knowledge of myths and legends from the ancient Earth era as well as his genetic equation ability, it wasn't too difficult for him to deduce new genetic sequences. But it was simply too troublesome. How much genetic potential would he need to expend for 100 genetic sequence diagrams? When he saw Kennard's gaze that was filled with anticipation, Phong Lin's heart stirred as a thought flashed through his mind. He then sent the information over. So fast? Kennard silently marveled. Could it be that this brat came here prepared? But when he opened up the information for a look, his eyes almost popped out from their sockets. This is information about the Norse mythology system.